Look, y'all already know me. I can't go anywhere without picking up a new piece of art, a little trinket, a poster, something for the crib. That's why the other art fair, that's a dangerous place for me. It's 4 days of independent artists, thousands of original artwork starting at around $100. Even if you're not trying to buy something, you can meet the artists, attend workshops and interactive installations, or, hang around for the mini golf, the DJ sets, and the fully stocked bar. Add the other art fair to your calendar. It's October 30th through November 2nd at Artifact Events in Ravenswood, and tickets start at just $20. Book your tickets online at theotherartfair.com. Fasten your seatbelts for an all areas access conversation spanning a decade inside Formula One with none other than former Haas F1 team principal Gunther Steiner. Unfiltered Live is an event no Formula One fan, hell, no racing fan should miss. The star of Netflix's smash hit docuseries Drive to Survive will take you on a wild ride through his career in motorsports and his decade of working on the Haas team. And it's for one night only. November 15th, Unfiltered Live at the Cadillac Palace Theater. Tickets at BroadwayInChicago.com. Today on CityCast Chicago, ICE raids terrorized Little Village this week. South suburban Harvey is navigating its very own government shutdown. And we are at the end of farmers market season, my friends. It's Friday, October 24th. I'm Jacoby Cochran, and this is what Chicago's talking about. I'm joined by WBEZ's Mariah Woelfel. Welcome back to the podcast.
Hi, Jacoby. Thanks for having me.
And the founder of the Harvey World Herald, Amethyst Davis. Good to have you, my friend.
Thank you for having me. Good morning.
It feels like every single week on the podcast, we are covering another raid from the Department of Homeland Security, whether it's Border Patrol or these mass ICE agents. And unfortunately, this week it hit Little Village very hard, which most people are probably very familiar, is the heart of Chicago's Mexican-American, and immigrant population in the city. Mariah, what do we know from what took place on Wednesday? All I saw were, video after video of agents just chasing people through the streets.
Yeah. So, according to people who were on the streets, including, the Coalition for Immigrant and Refugee Rights, there were agents with military style weapons, as we've seen. There were reports of pepper spray being used on the street. And like you said, this was on 26th Street in the heart of Little Village, the most prominent Mexican community in Chicago, and on the busiest commercial corridor. And so not only did this appear to be a deportation campaign, but like we've seen, it's also a major fear campaign. I mean, you are, making it so that people are fearful to go get a lime from the grocery store, or to really go outside of their house to traverse this really busy commercial corridor in the first place. And so we know that Border Patrol Chief Greg Bavino was out there as well to increase that sense of intimidation, or appear to be doing that. And at least 7 people were detained, including 2 city employees who I believe have been released. But these were 2 employees, including the chief of staff of Alderman Mike Rodriguez of the 22nd Ward on the Southwest side as well. And, we're just seeing a lot of response to this from community members, including Little Village residents who are urging Chicago Mayor Brandon Johnson to enforce his executive order that is supposed to prevent ICE from using city-owned lots for staging to prep for these types of raids. He signed that executive order earlier this month, but people said that they saw agents staging in a city water department parking lot on Sacramento Avenue. And so, the way that the city was supposed to enforce this was never going to be, at least, the intention wasn't to have police officers standing guard.
They was never going to meet him like agent for agent, gun for gun, you trying to arrest Chicagoans.
Right. But, they were supposed to put fences around parking lots, which is a little bit more than a sign. The main thing is putting signs up that says, this is an ice-free area by, the city's municipal code. I do think there are some questions there about at least what infrastructure can the city use to kind of prevent. I do think the city should be thinking about using those types of infrastructure in communities that are at higher risk. Like a parking lot in Little Village should probably be a place that the city should know could be used by ICE agents. And if that is the one tool in the city's toolbox to protect, public spaces from ICE agents and military style immigration raids, then I do think that they should be kind of utilizing that to its highest degree.
We heard from federal judges over the last few weeks that these tactics that agents have been using are unconstitutional, that they're terrorizing neighborhoods. And what's been very clear to me is that there doesn't seem to be much organization. Like they're hopping out on people that are streetcar vendors. They're racially profiling people in their cars. They're stopping people in alleys, outside of schools and laundromats at Home Depot. Honestly, it just feels like they just sort of threw their hands up in the air and was like, where do we think immigrants are? And their answer was the same place most of us think they are, right? At work, dropping their kids off to school.
To your point that it feels very disorganized and, not really targeted towards, undocumented people. Yeah, like we've seen, American citizens detained. Not that I make a huge distinction between a citizen and a non-citizen being aggressively detained or, tear gas. No one should be tear gassed when they're picking their kids up from school. Kids shouldn't be coming out of schools and smelling tear gas. And I think the like excuse that is used is that people are obstructing, they're obstructing law enforcement action. Well,
Right.
We've also seen people who have just been bystanders. I mean, this stuff is showing up on people's doorstep and they are stepping outside. They're concerned with what's going on. So they're pulling out their phone to record, which is a constitutional right, and are getting swept up in these aggressive raids because of just being in the wrong place at the wrong time, really. We also look at Alderperson Jesse Fuentes, who was detained in a Humboldt Park hospital, where these, federal agents went into a hospital to try to detain a patient who was there. And the alderperson showed up. I do think alder people really see their job here as being on the front lines. And she showed up to try to demand a warrant, or at least ask them whether they had a warrant. She filed a federal tort this week with the Trump administration for $100,000. And this is a claim that you can file with the agency who you were, potentially assaulted by, or, that they caused damage to your person or your property. And she filed this federal tort for $100,000. She said it's not about the money, but it's about, having one avenue to put on record these allegations of assault and to document in any way that you can in an official capacity what people see as abuses by federal agents. And so she's encouraging people to go that route, individual residents who feel that they've been assaulted by ICE or Border Patrol to file federal tort claims for monetary damages. Yeah, and I think that one question she's also raising is, at what point do Chicago police start standing outside of sensitive places like hospitals, like churches, like schools without a federal warrant? And I've asked, Chicago Mayor Brandon Johnson about this several times, and he has indicated that he does not think that is within the power of CPD to block federal agents from entering spaces. Although he continues to say that a federal agent needs to have a warrant to enter certain spaces. But then who holds them accountable to that is the question. And so far, it doesn't seem that the city is pursuing that. But I talked to Fuentes and she said she's asked the same questions of the Johnson administration and that they are, that is something that she wants to keep raising. I do think it's a question. And it's a question people are asking, especially with this executive order, kind of not really being enforced or not capable of being enforced in a meaningful way is like, at what point do we see CPD start to protect some of these public spaces?
I will say I continue to show love and have an immense amount of respect, admiration for just the everyday Chicagoans who are putting their bodies out there, the private businesses who locked their doors on 26th Street and said, you cannot come in here, who did everything they could, even as their friends, family, employees, and colleagues were being chased through the streets. And, that's something we have seen consistently, Chicagoans' ability to just as quickly coordinate and come together to push back as much as possible.
Again, I've asked like the mayor what he thinks Chicagoans should be doing in this moment, and he hasn't gone so far as to say, they should take matters into their own hands, but we're definitely seeing an escalation of that, I think, right now, of people just, if police can't protect, if local police can't protect us in this moment, if the courts can't protect us in this moment,
we got.
We're going to be pulling on people's arms to like keep them in our neighborhood.
We know that homelessness is a problem in Chicago and across the country, but for unhoused women and femmes, those dangers only multiply. There are proven solutions to ending chronic homelessness, permanent housing paired with supportive services. Deborah's Place is celebrating 40 years as Chicago's largest provider of permanent supportive housing for women. On Saturday, November 1st, Deborah's Place will kick off Homelessness Awareness Month with a 1.5-mile community walk. You can walk from East Garfield Park to West Humboldt Park alongside staff, supporters, and residents of Deborah's Place. Join to raise awareness for compassionate, effective solutions to homelessness. Learn more, register, or donate at deborahsplace.org. Starting to feel that draft come through your windows? Well, it's only October, so, I can imagine it's probably going to get a little bit worse as it gets breezier and colder. So get ahead before your heating bill starts to feel the blow and install top quality, affordable windows from Window Nation. Or reach out to your landlord and put them on it. You see, with a lifetime warranty and one-day installation, you can relax knowing Window Nation has you covered. Make no payments for 2 years. That's no monthly payment, no down payments, and no interest until 2027. That's a pretty solid deal, you ask me, with all this holiday spending that's coming up. Get started on your free estimate before Halloween to save big. Schedule a fast free estimate now with the pros at Window Nation. Call 866-90-NATION or visit windownation.com. While a ton of our attention has been focused on the federal government shutdown and our very own budget battle in the city, we've also focused in on the South Suburban municipality of Harvey, which is going through its very own government shutdown amidst growing budget concerns. Amethyst, how dire is the situation in Harvey right now?
Harvey is currently at least $149 million in debt. It only collects about 52% of its property taxes. The city does not have a tax base. And in August, laid off 10% of the municipal workforce. And as of this week, has furloughed an additional 69 employees, most of whom are actually police officers and firefighters, representing a 40% furlough. So currently, City Hall services are temporarily shut down in the sense that City Hall now closes at noon instead of 5 p.m. Furloughed folks will be paid through the end of the month. They're looking for state relief to actually assist with this.
Yeah, last week they held a special meeting where Mayor Chris Clark, in front of about 150 residents, basically had to say we're kind of underwater at this point from previous administrations. Like you said, we're going to need the state to come in and take over finances. What was the reaction to that meeting? Was the writing on the wall? Did people see this coming? How did folks react?
Residents felt blindsided. So this administration, Chris Clark has actually been in office for 6 years. He was elected in 2019, which is when Kellogg, because of term limits, was no longer able to run for re-election. And while Chris Clark's administration promised reform and transparency, he's actually kind of bucked that. And so for the past 2 years, which you've seen from residents, they've actually been complaining during city council meetings that the current administration is not transparent into city spending. That Harvey currently doesn't have a finance director. It's also the case that the mayor and finance department have been blocking city treasurer Aisha Pickett from delivering a treasurer's report. So she's also been in office for 6 years and has only given her report only a handful of times. And so residents who really don't necessarily have the most accurate information about what's been going on with city spending, in regard to that meeting where the city declared financially distressed, seeking state relief, they were really blindsided because the current administration has not been open about what exactly has been happening with Harvey's finances.
I mean, given that lack of transparency, how is the Clark administration painting this as a former Kellogg problem, given he's been in office 6 years? I understand there's been a pandemic. We understand how dire the financial straits are for a few towns in the South suburbs. This isn't the first time we've had this conversation. So how is Clark trying to sell this narrative to residents that this really isn't my fault?
Yeah, the two primary talking points are, well, one, I inherited a $164 million debt burden.
And I've made it better by $12 million.
Well, he's made it better. Yeah, by 15 million, right? By 15 million, because it's 149. The other talking point, too, is that Harvey businesses are not paying their commercial property taxes. And that actually roughly amounts to about $12 million, which if Harvey businesses did pay property taxes, according to Comptroller Lewis Williams, Harvey might actually be operating at a surplus. So those are the primary talking points that the mayor is using, is that it's not my fault, it's Kellogg's fault and business owners' fault. But what this administration is likely culpable for are the leadership and financial policy decisions that Chris Clark has made in the 6 years that you could argue sent Harvey's financial crisis into overdrive. So in 2024, he introduced a measure in City Council in January 24, where if you are a business located at a commercial property that is delinquent, tax delinquent, that your business license can be revoked. Now, this is for businesses that own that property and for those that don't and simply rent them. So you have both property owners and businesses that rent who have had their business licenses revoked. In response, the mayor's office unilaterally, without the approval of city council, released a quote unquote settlement agreement to these businesses, where they, in lieu of having to pay fines and fees associated with operating without a business license, they could simply pay either between $12,000 or $30,000 in fees to the city of Harvey, and they would still be allowed to operate. Now, Illinois state legislature sets the property tax code. So for Cook County, the treasurer's office is the only entity that is legally allowed to send bills and collect payments. Mm-hmm. That is to say, none of the money that Harvey collects through this quote unquote settlement agreement, which at this point has been roughly $500,000, can be applied toward the delinquent property taxes. So this has actually invited now a federal extortion lawsuit where some of those businesses and residents have sued the mayor, the police chief, the head of public works, as well as folks in the mayor's office, alleging that the city is using unpaid property tax collections as a pretext to extort local businesses. So that is some of the antagonism that you've seen between this administration and local businesses. The mayor's office actually directed public works to place cinder blocks directly in front of the doors of local businesses so that customers couldn't even get in, couldn't park, and couldn't patronize. And so as a result, a lot of these businesses have closed down and they've moved to other South suburban municipalities, or they've actually just moved out of the region altogether, went across the border to Indiana. And that has also created further financial strain in the city of Harvey. So this administration, they inherited that tax bill, but they've made questionable decisions in the 6 years that Chris Clark has been mayor, that you could argue has only agitated this financial crisis, which puts a further burden on the homeowners, if anything.
I mean, what is the morale or the next step or the recourse that residents can take? Because I feel like every conversation I've ever had with you, Amethyst, it feels like the residents are dealing with either an aggressive or negligent administration. They're dealing with the decades and generations of population loss, of divestment in the community. Like, what is the morale in residents given that they were promised by this administration sort of change? They're 6 years in, and as you have just pointed out, arguably things have gotten worse than the previous administration in some respects.
Yeah, so we've been speaking with residents over the years about their thoughts on the current administration. And the sense is, I had a lot of hope for this guy, and I kind of feel let down. I will give this administration and the city council the credit to say that if you are inheriting a debt burden of $164 million, you're dealing with population loss. In a region where people pay the highest real estate property taxes in all of Cook County, and that gets them subpar schooling and food deserts, like that's a pretty significant lift. And that's not necessarily a problem that gets fixed overnight. It does get fixed over time. But residents, they've had a lot of patience, right? People in Harvey have dealt with economic crisis after economic crisis. They've had decades of being patient, and they are just really at this point fed up. And for those who can, they're moving with their feet and they're leaving the city. For what it's worth, and I was thinking about this, we have copious amounts of academic research and policy tools to draw from to answer this question of, well, how do we revitalize a major U.S. city, right? Like we actually have been working on that particular challenge for some time in like urban planning spaces. We don't necessarily have a toolkit to draw from to revitalize an American suburb. We don't have a toolkit to draw from to revitalize rural America. And so the mayor, Chris Clark, has been saying as of late, we need people who are innovative thinkers to help us get out of this problem. He's out to that point. He's absolutely right.
This episode is brought to you by Mubi, a global streaming service dedicated to elevating great cinema. On Mubi, stream beautiful hand-picked films anytime, anywhere. Right now, you can stream Lurker, a sharp psychological thriller and the directorial debut of the Bear and Beef writer-producer Alex Russell. It follows a 20-something retail clerk who crosses paths with a rising pop star and slowly worms his way into their world, stan culture gone mad as the line between friend and fan blurs. Access and proximity turn into a matter of life and death. Y'all, I saw it at the Music Box about a month and a half ago. I ain't gonna lie, kind of creepy, real suspenseful. You're always kind of on the edge of your seat wondering what's gonna happen. You can watch Lurker and so much more exclusively on Mubi. And the best part, you could try it free for 30 days. Just head to Mubi.com/CityCast25. That's Mubi, MUBI.com/CityCast25. You can keep up and read more from all of these stories at the links in our show notes. Again, I'm here with WBEZ's Mariah Woelfel and the Harvey World Herald founder, Amethyst Davis. Amethyst, the last time we were doing a deep dive into the South suburbs, we were talking about the highly controversial and public tenure of former Dalton Mayor Tiffany Henyard. She was defeated pretty easily earlier this year by Jason House. And then she also served as the township supervisor, which she also lost that position to State Senator Napoleon Harris. Now, Harris has been in the news recently for, in some ways, I think some residents would argue kind of very similar circumstances. Can you kind of catch us up with the controversy now surrounding Harris?
Yeah, so Napoleon Harris, who I'll also say does not live within Thornton Township. He actually lives in Flossmoor. Therefore, he's not actually eligible to be Thornton Township supervisor. Napoleon Harris has made waves across Thornton Township because of his salary. So a first-time supervisor's salary in Thornton Township has been set through the code, the township code, at $57,000. However, Napoleon Harris, as a state senator, actually was able to leverage sort of that influence down in Springfield to be able to guarantee that he would keep Tiffany Henyard's $202,000 plus salary. Tiffany Henyard inherited her predecessor's salary. So Frank Zuccarelli's,
who was there for decades, right?
over 30 years.
Yeah.
So the way the salary works is that the first time supervisor is $57,000 and it incrementally increases with every year, capping out at like $200,000 plus in that like 7th year. So that is how Tiffany Henyard wound up with such a bloated salary, because she inherited Zuccarelli's. Napoleon Harris, upon coming in, whose salary was supposed to be set at $57,000, but he introduced this bill in Springfield to keep his township salary, and it was defeated. The bill failed, but another Democratic official was able to introduce and pass, which was, signed by Governor J.B. Pritzker, a bill that would allow him to sort of keep that bloated salary. So he's ripping the benefits. And so now Napoleon Harris has a $123,000 plus salary as a state senator. He's been able to keep $202,000 roughly. So he makes, upwards of $320,000 plus, in addition to $59,000 in an allowance that he also gets as township supervisor. And so he's been really catching some flack from residents about this, who've also been complaining because his administration has bucked a forensic audit that they've been requesting to actually learn more about Tiffany Henyard's tenure. And most recently, the township board actually decided to reduce the number of monthly meetings from 2 to 1. So now township residents have less interaction with local officials.
Didn't everybody run against Tiffany, saying that this was, right, she was the bad apple? This wasn't sort of widespread. This wasn't a systemic issue. This wasn't something that, residents have been dealing with across like townships and municipalities, as we've talked about today. Everybody ran on increased transparency. Did Harris say at any point during his sort of process that he would sort of accept the state allowed salary, or was he kind of mums on that the entire time?
He was mum the entire time. The only reason residents even found out is because Paul Berkowitz in Lansing, a resident, started doing his own public records requests and stumbled upon the bloated salaries of Harris and other township officials. And so that's actually how they became knowledgeable of this. But this is not Harris's first time using or allowing state influence to usurp ethics reform in the South suburbs. He actually co-sponsored a bill along with Thaddeus Jones, state official, and the mayor of Calumet City, to upend and nullify term limits in Calumet City, Harvey, and Dalton. So this is not Napoleon Harris's first rodeo of being able to use that state seat or reap the benefits of that state seat in order to circumvent home rule and transparency and reform in the Southland.
Especially, being a podcast that primarily covers Chicago. So it's a lot of Mayor Brandon Johnson this, Governor Pritzker this, Tony Preckwinkle this, right? The pressure flowing down from the federal government. I'm getting this sense, especially in the South suburbs. Do you get the sense that people just aren't paying attention, that I wouldn't have even known that you could hold two positions in, sort of state government at the same time, that people were getting these $300,000 salaries, that people were just openly voting to suspend term limits? What do you think maybe the lack of media attention that the South suburb gets, does that in some ways sort of insulate the corruption of some of these politicians? Because it seems like they're just like passing the buck down, despite the fact that many of these stories have made local and national headlines.
Yeah, so if you actually look at the Southland, most of these municipalities are news deserts. So the Harvey World Herald is only one of, in Thornton Township, which has 17 municipalities. We're only one of 3 local news organizations within this entire township, joining the Lansing Journal in Lansing, and then HF Chronicle, which covers Homewood and Flossmoor. And I would actually say that, yes, because of that large absence of hyperlocal news and that watchdog, a lot of this behavior has festered. But I also add to that there's an entire infrastructure around government accountability that doesn't exist in the Southland. There's no such thing as an inspector general around these parts, right? Chicago has an inspector general, right? The county has inspector generals, but these smaller communities, they're often struggling to finance and hire a village administrator or police officers or accountants, let alone hire someone to be a watchdog on themselves, even if they would in the off chance want to make that type of hire and commitment. So I think it's a combination of the lack of hyper local independent news and journalism in the Southland, coupled with this complete absence of infrastructure around accountability, which itself paradoxically requires money these communities don't have.
Mariah, one story you and your colleagues have been making sure that Chicagoans don't forget about is a raid that took place a few weeks ago on an apartment complex in South Shore, where nearly 40 people had their apartment building smashed into. Black Hawk helicopters over the top of their apartment. People, kids and folks zip tied and kept in vans for hours and hours. I mean, this story has made waves across the country, but we're still kind of learning more with not only what took place that evening, but the state of the building before agents ever showed up.
Yeah, we are staying on this story because there are a lot of unanswered questions about how this apartment building came to the federal administration's attention. Like, how did they know which apartments to break down, for instance? Because in reporting this out, we learned that some residents, their apartment units were completely untouched, unbothered. They didn't even get a knock at the door. And others, were broken down. The doors were broken down in the middle of the night. And one of the things that, my colleague Sophie Sherry and I learned while reporting this out, we found a map on the floor of the apartment building. And this was a week after the raid. And it was a crumpled up piece of paper. It was trash. But Sophie picked it up and it was a map of each floor of the building. And each unit was marked as either vacant, which is presumably where either squatters or non-paying migrants were living, resident, which was marked green on the map, and then firearms, which was marked red on the map. And so we presume that that's information about which residents had firearms. And some were marked as residential and firearms. And so it seems that whoever created this map had information about whether someone was a paying tenant, whether they had a gun, or whether they were a non-paying tenant, and whether they had a gun. And so we are following this story to try to figure out, how this raid was carried out and see if there's a pattern going forward. And so one of the follow-up stories that my colleagues did this week was about one of the things that a lot of residents told us was that, the building has had long-standing issues with unhoused people taking up shelter. And a lot of the residents appeared to be like kind of sympathetic to that. Like, these are people with nowhere else to go and it gets cold in the winter. And so, but that has also created problems for our building. But things really took a nosedive in the building, residents say, when this property manager, Strength and Management, came to be in 2024, took over the building. And just maintenance requests went unanswered. The building wasn't regularly cleaned. If they did clean, they would only clean the first floor. They decided not to pay for armed security, even though that is a really big need for this building. And that just exacerbated the problems. That allowed people to come in and not pay rent. And some of those people did not care for the building. Also, migrant families were living in the building who were trying to make it a better place. And so it's a complex story. But this follow-up was about how that property management company, a group that's associated with it, has donated to several city council members in the past few years. It's called Strength and Management, and the group is led by Strength and Management's CEO, Corey Oliver. And Corey Oliver's group has donated to Alderperson Nicole Lee, Alderperson Brennan Riley, Alderperson Brian Hopkins, Monique Scott, Bill Conway, Timmy Knudsen, Deborah Silverstein, Gilbert Villegas, George Cardenas.
These are some of the more conservative alders.
Yeah, I would say that.
Maybe there's a mixture as you've gone through them, but some of those names that I'm hearing,
yeah, for sure,
are typically alders who kind of come together.
That's like a more moderate voting bloc.
Yes.
And then Alderperson Greg Mitchell in 2023 is the most recent donation he got, which was $500. And this is just all relevant because the city was aware of it's all relevant in this entire complex picture because you have the raid and we want to figure out who knew about the raid ahead of time. We still don't know that. That map does indicate that there was some information floating around specific to the residents of the building that someone had and shared in this map. So there's that piece. And then there's also the piece of the fact that the city has known about the conditions of this building, which were unacceptable for residents to be living in, migrants or not, for years. The city has sued the owner of the building, Trinity Flood, and the city itself has admitted to in documents not being able to complete inspections because of their own safety concerns. So the city knew that this building was so unsafe that their own inspectors couldn't go into it to complete inspections. Yet there wasn't more urgent action outside of a lawsuit taken to protect the residents of this building. I mean, there is a unit that water is pouring through the ceiling and it could cave in at any moment. There's feces in the hallway wall. It smells like urine. There's gnats all over the place. And that was all before the ICE raid. So it's relevant to look at the alderpersons who have taken contributions from this property management company while the city has been aware of the conditions that this property management company has allowed in this building. And so it's something that we continue to follow, and the stories on the Sun-Times if people want more information on it, and reach out to me if you know anything about this mysterious map.
Every single episode of CityCast Chicago ends the exact same way, and that is with some good news. If you're new to the podcast, I want to be very clear. Our good news is never to distract from the stories that we cover at the top of the episodes, just to leave you with a little bit of positivity. Amethyst, what is your good news for CityCast Chicago this week?
The storefront is still open. Do not let these people send you off. So the storefront, that's where you get some of the best tacos and tortas and all of the whole Chicago area. If you know, they were downtown Harvey and they was closed for a brief moment and the streets was concerned. I got phone calls about it. They are still open. They are on 147th and Halsted, and it's a sign on the door that say the torta spot. And now they got dinners and specials, the whole nine. So they expanded. We up. The streets is up. So the storefront's still open. We still up. We still up.
What's your go-to order?
Man, I give me a chicken torta with everything on it. Red sauce, green sauce, both of them. Then I give me three chicken tacos, everything on them. Real ones know. It's cilantro and onions. Stop playing with me.
You give people the address one more time.
It's 147th and Halsted in Harvey. It's a shopping mall type of situation.
Okay, I'm gonna have to pull up on them because we just did a Best Tacos Part 2, and you ain't say Best Tacos in Harvey or the South Suburbs, Southland. You said in the entire land, the entire Chicagoland area.
The entire land. Go.
I need to pull up on the torta spot. All right, cool. Will do. And I will report back. Mariah, over to you. What is your good news for CityCast Chicago today?
Well, I was just going to say boring old weather, but you guys have got, I love this fall weather, but you guys have got me on the taco train. Tacos on the brain. While we're at it, why don't we just say you should go support some Little Village businesses this weekend? La Chaparrita is my favorite taqueria in the city.
I went there a few years ago. Carlos Ballesteros took me and Simone. I had it. I loved it, but I ain't even gonna hold you. Forgot about it. I was just like, oh, that was great. And then some years had passed. For this tacos episode, me and Michelle went back and pulled up on them. Officially, now that I was really able to sit with it, I'm with you.
What's your order?
So the first time I went, I got the tongue. Usually I just grab some steak tacos, but I love La Chaparrita. Such a beautiful space.
Yeah, it's great. You got to get the crispy tripe.
Okay.
The cow stomach. Yeah. It's so good and it's so crispy. And I love their tacos because they're so small. And so you can really just it's like a 3-bite situation. They serve beer now if you're into that. And yeah, I think I got to go this weekend or, sometime soon.
What's interesting is I had no idea that we was going to be talking tacos this morning. And my good news is in a similar vein, because I don't know if y'all know this, but us over here at City Cast Chicago, we absolutely love summer farmers market season. And for most of our favorite farmers market, this is our last week to really get out and enjoy them, either this weekend or into next week. So like the 61st Street Farmers Market, their last day is Saturday. The 95th Street Farmers Market, their last day is Sunday. The Austin Town Hall Farmers Market ends next week. I think that's Thursday. Same with the Daily Plaza Farmers Market, the South Loop Farmers Market, where I've been going as many Saturday mornings as I possibly can. We luckily get 2 more Saturdays. However, I won't be here on November 1st because I'll be in Atlanta for my sister's wedding/birthday weekend. And so this is my last weekend to get over to the South Loop Farmers Market. And my favorite taco of the summer, besides La Chaparrita, has been from Mother Prepper, who is one of the stalls at the South Loop Farmers Market, and they pop up around the city doing some catering as well. They also got the tortas, the breakfast tacos, the asada tacos. They also got a Boricuan bowl, so it's like a rice and steak bowl with some plantains. It has been the line I've been willing to stand in every single Saturday morning. If you have been putting it off, you haven't gotten to your neighborhood farmers market, or you haven't used it as the perfect opportunity to visit, a neighborhood you don't usually visit, or visit one of the amazing suburban farmers market, come on, get it in this weekend or next week before you regretting it and you looking up having to wait another 6-7 months until they back around. Please join me in thanking our guest today, founder of the Harvey World Herald, Amethyst Davis. Thank you so much for making time for the podcast.
Thank you for having me. It's always a joy.
And from WBEZ, Mariah Woolful, it's been a while, but we appreciate you being back here, my friend.
Yeah, I was so happy to be back. Thanks for having me.
Before we get out of here, I want to give a huge thank you to the entire City Cast Chicago team, the Hey Chicago team, the people who make sure this podcast and newsletter get to you every single day, Monday through Friday. Our team is led by executive producer Simone Alisea. Our producer is Michelle Navarro. Our Hey Chicago newsletter editor is Emmy Mack. Our social media manager is Rick Homuth. And y'all, I want to give a special thank you to our senior account executive over here at City Cast Chicago, Jenny Winter, who helps us keep the lights on over here at the podcast. A way y'all can help us keep the lights on is signing up to become a City Cast Chicago neighbor at membership.citycast.fm. All you got to do, if you got it like that, $10 a month, maybe $100 a year, right? That means you're getting 2 months for the free, and you're going to get ad-free listening, access to neighbors-only events. We're going to send you an email every single week with some of our favorite things to do in and around the city, right? This Neighbors program is a way for y'all to say, we appreciate the work that y'all do. We love it. We want to see it go on for as long as possible. Or selfishly, your way of saying, thank you, Jenny, but I ain't trying to hit none of them ads. Either way, we will take it. I want to give a huge thank you to the people who make our music. That's the homie Sam Thousand, all the kimonos, and Mark Greenberg from the Mayfair Workshop. Hey, if you enjoyed the podcast and the newsletter, beyond signing up to become a neighbor, beyond meeting us back here bright and early next week, I think one of the best things you could do for us is please share us with the people who you think need to learn more about the city of Chicago, the people who love the city of Chicago and are looking for another way to engage. If you know somebody who could benefit from even just one of our episodes, right? Somebody who loves Chicago rap music and would appreciate our episode from this week with FemDot. Somebody who hears a $16.6 billion budget and doesn't know where to start, show them our episode on Monday with WTTW's Heather Sharon. Right? If you are trying to get people to fall in love with Chicago's history of architecture, if you're trying to get people to know where to put their frustrations as they are upset about our city being terrorized by the federal government, if you want to help people in your life make new friends or give them the best places for tacos or places for a damn picnic before it get too chilly out here. We got something for you, and as such, we got something for every single person who calls Chicago home, has any interest in Chicago, wants to learn more about it, moved away, and needs to feel connected to this place. Whatever the case may be, we got a crate of nearly 1,200 episodes, and I promise you, at least a couple dozen of them speak directly to you and somebody in your life. So if you can, spread the love and put them on. I know that was a lot. We're going to be back bright and early on Monday. We'll talk to you then. I'm off my soapbox. Peace.